Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the film Civil War, and we have dragged our dear friends who are very frequent collaborators and friends of the pod, Pat and Nate. We apologize in advance that you have had to endure this experience, but we're going to have a really great conversation to process this movie together in the circle of safety and friendship. Okay, Pat and Nate, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Nate, friend of the pod. Love being here. Excited to have our own little Civil War on this episode.
I'm Pat, homie of the cast. Also love being here. Be super dope, like Nate said, if we watch something good at some point to talk about.
Yeah, Pat and Nate joined us for the journey that was True Detective Night Country. Go listen to that on TV and S Pod, and we definitely ripped into that one. And we ended that experience saying, hey guys, let's celebrate and watch great things together. And of course, we followed that up with Alex Garland's Civil War here several weeks later. So welcome back, y'all. All right. Well, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Civil War?
A journey across a dystopian future America following a team of military-embedded journalists as they race against time to reach D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House.
I'm exhausted already, just listening to the IMDb summary. Okay, let's dive right in then, y'all. In this first section, we will keep our thoughts at a high level. We won't spoil this movie. And if you want to hear us talk about the second half of this movie where we really dive into all of the plot points, I don't know if I recommend checking this movie out, but if you don't want this to be spoiled, this is your spoiler alert. So, anywho, let's dive right in. Share our thoughts, temp checks, a round table of temp checks on how we felt about Civil War. Sarah, why don't you go first? Ease us in. Let's go.
I don't want to go first. I know.
No, none of us want to go first. And as hosts of the pod, I suppose we should go first.
I think that this movie is effective in stressing you out and making you feel as though you are in the middle of the chaos of what a civil war could maybe be like. I think that the movie is really is smart in avoiding the political stuff and not wading into it and just saying like, hey, we're dropped into the middle of a civil war. I do wish that it would have gone maybe a little further with exploring actually what it would be like if that happened here. Like, I feel like we dip our toe into kind of certain moments, and I feel like it maybe could have gone deeper of just the ramifications of something like that. But I think it was effective. I did not enjoy it. I would never want to see this movie again. And I think some of the things that I was worried about with this movie, they definitely avoided some of the pitfalls that I thought that it would fall into. So yeah, I think that's kind of high level where I'm at with Civil War.
That was really graceful. That was wonderful. I'm so impressed. You really understood the assignment with easing us in. That was great. All right, I can go next, since often Pat and Nate, you two are going first. So I hated this movie so much. I think it is like cotton candy, but instead of made out of sugar crystals, it's made out of like shards of glass. Like, this is
Fiberglass.
Cutting you in every possible way. Huh?
Just say fiberglass. That's effectively cotton candy.
Right. I think that it is intentionally provocative, but oftentimes that feels really irresponsible when it's not followed up with purpose and meaning and points of view. And so this film, I think, and Alex Garland in his interviews is talking about how he wanted this to be neutral. He wanted it to be objective. He wanted it to mirror old-fashioned journalism. But I think it's I think it's just kind of like cowardly and not trying to lean into any political view in any kind. And I think if we are to endure an experience like this that is traumatic and jarring and visceral and awful to watch, like it needs to be worth it. And I feel like it was not worth it. I just kept asking myself, like, what is the point of all of this other than to get us to feel something, which I just think some what if questions may not need to be answered. So, you know, when you go hiking and you get a bug on you and you're like, it will get this off of me immediately. That's how I felt about this movie. I'm like, I reject this experience. I reject the energy of this movie. Get it off of me. So this was a really fascinating experience. And I think that the discourse around it is fascinating because people are really on both sides of their views of this movie. And there are some people that are really appreciating what this does. So I think that in and of itself is really fascinating. And I was reading those reviews, curious where each of us would fall on that spectrum. So I'm excited to hear where you both land as well. So Pat, Nate, who wants to share their thoughts next?
Me?
Go for it.
All right. Well, I guess we'll do a layer cake because I kind of liked it. Yeah, I think it has some issues. It's not my favorite thing that he's done, but I think, similar to what Sarah was saying, it's a far better movie than the trailer promised it would be. So a lot of this might just be like managing my own expectations going into it. But I found it very tense and engaging. It was like an edge of your seat viewing experience. I thought it was pretty respectful of like the topic that it was grappling with. I do think that it is pretty muddied in like its messaging, other than like, wouldn't this suck? But yeah, I think it has some flaws. I think the beauty of it is pretty skin deep, as we'll definitely get into. But yeah, I thought it was, better than I expected.
I am shocked. My jaw is on the ground. I have so many questions. We will get to those. All right, Pat, pop off. How do you feel about Civil War? What do you think?
What if I don't want to pop off? What if I just want to speak with my inside voice?
Okay. We'll see how long you'll go with the inside voice.
It's the movie White House Down, and you put it in a blender, and you put pee in there, and then you took The Purge, one that's about the 4th of July, put that in the blender with some bleach, and you mixed it up, and you pulled it out as a single movie. That is what we have here.
So did you like it, or?
Yeah, I love movies.
Good job. The inside voice is still thriving right now. I'm impressed. Very good. All right, any more feelings?
Okay.
Not on this side of the spoiler wall.
I see. Okay, well, we'll include our spoiler here then, so we can really dive in. If you haven't seen Civil War, we are about to spoil the movie. I guess some people thought it was great, so listen to them and go watch it, but maybe also save your money and don't watch it. If you want my opinion, my 2 cents. So, let's dive in fully. Pat, we are now on the other side of the spoiler wall. If you would like to unpack your blended smoothie of...
I might have, I guess, similar to Nate, a unique opinion or recollection of my experience with this movie, except in the other direction. I didn't feel on the edge of my seat. I didn't feel tension, with the exception of the one scene with Jesse Plemons, who, by the way, handling lye with bare hands is always a great idea. Super smart. But aside, what?
He's got a lot going on. I feel like of all of the things.
Yeah, the strawberry colored sunglasses.
Like, practice chemical safety, man.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, with the number of bodies, he's out there doing it every day. So, get some PPE, personal protective equipment. Come on. It's just a pair of gloves. I was just bored. I was like, what the fuck is the point of this? Where are we going? What am I rooting for? And or who?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just kind of like, I don't know what we're doing here.
Wow. We've got a full spectrum of opinions today. This is fascinating. This is really fascinating. Because I think, Pat, I have like the similar perspective on what are we doing here, but also on top of it, just like the visceral experience of like gunshots firing and some of the imagery in this movie. Just I'm like, why? Why are you showing this to us other than being like what you were saying, Nate, earlier, of like, wouldn't this suck? And it's like, yes, but I think we kind of know that, right? Like we know this would suck. Why are we experiencing it unless there's a point of view on the other side? Would love to hear what that point of view is, but I guess we're being objective and neutral is what we're doing, which is a very convenient nickname for maybe not having any substance or anything to say. Although he has described this as his version of the Rorschach test of America, which I think is fascinating. I'm curious if that point of view seems to resonate with anyone around, like, is this meant to be an experience that he's showing you what it could be and getting us as the viewers to grapple with and wrestle with the questions of how might we end up there or try to take steps now before we end up there. But it's more of a warning and a depiction of what it could be as like a call to action.
Back up. He said this was a Rorschach test for America.
I think what he's saying is, here is what it could be. What do you interpret from it as the viewer? It's up to you. It's up to you to wrestle with the questions. This is meant to provoke that line of thinking without biasing you on either way, which is kind of similar to what Sarah and Nate were saying earlier on. Like, he's intentionally abstracted the points of view of the many forces fighting here. There's some allusion to like political figures and events, but they're not very strong. So he's kind of like, from his perspective, gracefully stepped back from that, which this could have been.
It just sounds like the most self-indulgent, like, righteous. Who says shit like that? I produced a piece of art that captures, like, that challenges the many opinions that could be had of something like that would be so significant. What world of pretensia do you have to consistently live in to say some shit like that?
It's you're testing your indoor voice.
Yeah. What happened?
Well, I didn't know we were going to have director quotes. I thought we were just going to talk about what was on the screen, not what was off the screen.
Oh, I read so many of his interviews because I was really trying to understand the intention, because I did not understand the intention from the movie.
Me neither.
So surely I need to read to figure it out.
I don't think that like the imagery, as you put it, was like super like pointless or like out of place, or I forget how you said it exactly, but like I think the purpose of it, setting it in like a modern day, not too distant future American Civil War, is like we've seen movies like this like 100 times, like anti-war movies with like really evocative imagery. It's just they're always set in like Africa or like Eastern Europe or like past World War II, like Vietnam era wars and things like that. I think that like a lot of that shared sort of collective consciousness of like war being bad and it being something that, you know, everyday people have to deal with is sort of like beginning to like lose hold on like the American public. So I think there's something of value there of like placing it here where like that turmoil and that civilian collateral damage is like happening in like landmarks you see in places like that. And it's not like it, like what I hated about the trailer was like it looked like more like a Roland Emmerich movie or like a White House Down or something like that. I don't think that the tone of this movie was really anything close to that. It was more like an Apocalypse Now kind of thing about a civil war in America.
I would challenge that this movie didn't know what tone to take. I agree with you, and would say that this movie was kind of all over the place at different times.
I think there are flaws. I think we should get into the music choices at some point because
Oh
they're
yeah.
pretty much
Oh
universally
yeah.
for me. Uh, because like I think the intent of a lot of that stuff is to kind of, you know, make you sit with like the anti-war stuff is like very grotesque and everything. And I think a lot of the intent of the song choices was to kind of like underpin the absurdity or something like that. I think it pretty much failed. I kind of had to turn my ears off and like sit with like the grotesqueness of the visuals and just like kind of ignore the music that was playing. But yeah,
Well,
I
why
thought
don't we
pretty
just
much all.
tweet Alex Garland, or what's his name, the asshole who made Men? Is that what we're settling on? Because I'm sure he'd love to tell us why he went with his
He's
music
not an
choices.
asshole. That's very rude.
I'm sure he'd love to tell us his music choices and why he chose them and why he decided to ruin a perfectly good De La Soul song that didn't fit the scene whatsoever. But, you know, I'm not a filmmaker, so.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a spoonful of sugar with some like evocative imagery, and I was like, I don't really want that. I just kind of want to sit with the horror of it. That's kind of the point.
I wonder if his choice, I mean, like you mentioned, for that is to make it somewhat bearable, which it's not bearable, but like it felt like an attempt to create this like tonal dissonance, which I feel like we've seen other filmmakers do that really well, and it just felt I don't know, felt out of place or wrong for the movie that it is. Like if you're going to commit to making a movie like this, commit fully, right? And similarly around the ideology of this movie, like if you're going to commit to exploring this idea of what division looks like and how it plays out, like commit fully to the point of view you want to make about it versus, I don't know, this kind of like slightly more like a presentation of what could happen versus I'm like, okay, so what do you think about it? Like what do you believe is the path forward, or what do you believe is the key around even the whole bit around photojournalism I thought was like the most interesting part of this movie, to shoot it from the perspective of these protagonists that are there to capture these horrific moments, but also are wrestling within themselves as human beings with the emotions of it, which we as the audience are as well. But I don't feel I think he in his interviews has shared that he's very passionate about like old-fashioned journalism, but I didn't feel that in the way that he like wrote these characters and the endings for these characters. Like the movie doesn't seem to care about these people, and they suck in so many ways that I'm like, this could have been really great and bearable had the world been dystopian, but the people are good, you know. And there's just a lot of like shitty things that these characters do, which I thought was just like an odd choice. So I feel like the way that these characters are in are also like very strange to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I don't know. I think there's a reading of it where it's like an indictment of like modern day kind of journalism and like just like doing anything to kind of get the story and get the money shot or whatever it was, the glory shot at the end. And yeah, I don't know. The movie seems to kind of both valorize and like vilify journalists like simultaneously. It's like it goes to great lengths to show like the bravery and like tenacity of these people. But it's also not shy about pointing out how like fucked in the head they are. Like they are kind of like detached, self-interested egomaniacs who are like just going for the best story regardless
right.
of
like
life.
When does passion-driven altruism and their mission behind their journaling turn into adrenaline-fueled narcissism?
Yeah, I think that's like there in the text. I'm not sure what it's trying to say. I think the movie is more interested in asking questions than it is answering them, which is something.
Well, we know that this man loves to ask questions. Sarah, you've been quiet for a few minutes. Please share.
Yeah, you're the only one who was anywhere near my side of the table.
Yeah, no, I agree, especially about the characters. Like I wanted more depth from them. I think, you know, like we get some flashbacks to Lee's past and what she's gone through as a photojournalist and everything she endured to like get those shots. And but that's kind of all that we know about her. Like, I don't know, these characters, they didn't seem to have a lot of depth to me, even though we've just spent so much time with them. I feel like we didn't actually get to know them all that well. And so then I think especially Lee's death, presumably at the end, that just did not make sense to me. Like that she would, it makes sense that Jesse would be just out here not following the rules, doing whatever, but for Lee to like knock her down and then to just stand there in the line of fire to get shot, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. So like I really struggled with that piece of it too. But yeah, I wish that the characters felt more three-dimensional rather than just this two-dimensional journalist to get us to think how bad a civil war would be.
Yeah, Kirsten Dunst's death scene was one of those like Prometheus moments where it's like, just run to the side. Like, why? if you're jumping into a hallway, just push them back behind the wall. So mechanically, it bothered me. I think thematically, I was kind of okay with it. I think her character throughout the movie, like, identified with Jesse's character, like saw a lot of herself in her, and like throughout the movie became a lot more sort of like less detached to the things going on around her, especially when it came to things happening to Jesse. Like the reason they went down to like save her from Jesse Plemons was like mostly because of her saying like, I'm going down there. And then like you start to see her feel like the trauma of what's going on like during the battle scene and stuff like that. So I think, you know, it was kind of like the changing of the guard and also this that sort of mini arc that she was going through.
Yeah, I don't mind her dying. I mind how she died. It's like really like
mechanically it was very stupid.
It's so stupid.
And then she snaps a picture, and I was like, that was like the only time during the movie where I actively rolled my eyes like away from the screen. I was like,
The only reason they're in the middle of the hallway is so that they can have it backlit, so you get this really great silhouette for the visuals. That's literally the only reason. Yeah. They're like, wouldn't it be beautiful if? And therefore, none of it else makes sense. Well, also, I mean, Jesse just like walks away. I mean, I know she's like in an intense moment, but I think it speaks to like the like tunnel vision that she has for getting the shot. Like homegirl just gets up and like no emotion, like ice cold. And it's just in this dystopian world where there is already so much difficulty, the fact that like none of these characters felt like they could be someone that we could just like sink our teeth into, latch onto, like follow, root for, was rough. I was like grasping for something. My lifeline was Sammy, like the only character that seems to have a heart and a soul and a care and a connection with all of these people. I'm like, okay, Sammy's my safe place to just,
you know, like, what though?
Survive the experience of this movie.
But you know what though? Like Sammy also has to be the favorite character because he didn't make it far enough into the movie for Mr. Garland to vilify him. Because he more or less, in my opinion, kind of did that with everybody else in different moments. And the character inconsistencies to me are what really jumped out. Like before they go into the White House or whatever where the president is, Lee is like having a panic attack behind the cement wall. Then they get through like the barricade and she's good. She's like in action. She's saving saving Jesse, who, like you said, is like so detached. She's like, your hero's dying in front of you, but your brain still is only thinking about the picture. Like, that doesn't add up. Panic attack, and then like being very in control seconds later didn't seem to add up. And then Joel was like talking about his boner for gunfights one night and then having these like crazy responses to people getting killed the next day. And it's like, isn't this what you live and breathe? Like, why are you having such a reaction right now, even if you do know these people? And then he gets like sad again. Like, it just, I don't know.
Well, and he has that reaction when his friends are shot, and then he doesn't react when Lee dies, even though he and Lee have just spent an entire almost 2-hour movie together. And I understand he needs to go get a quote from the president before the president dies, but like no emotion from him, no recognition
at all. He calmly
walks
into that room like no big deal. Meanwhile, like his hothead death race Furiosa loving friend gets shot and he's like flipping out like his mom just got offed.
The character scene that really I was like, I call bullshit on this scene is when Kirsten Dunst's character Lee tries on the dress when Jesse suggests it. I'm like, this we have seen her as that character that is on a mission, clear-headed, detached herself, disengaged because of everything she's experienced. She's got a goal. There's no way they're gonna stop, and because this girl that she feels some sort of like connection to, a younger version of herself, is like, hey, try on this green dress. And like this character that I know, or that I thought I know, would have been like, that's great, we gotta go, we got a mission, we gotta head to whatever, DC, whatever, you know. So I feel like it's a really, like, I think sweet moment between them, but I think if it had come later, maybe I could have bought it a little bit more. But it's so early in the movie and I'm like, wait, aren't you supposed to be this like hard-headed, mission driven, we gotta keep going type of character? I was like, I'm losing trust with this movie. I call bullshit.
Yeah, that seemed like I don't know. I agree. I don't think that would have happened character-wise, but I like Kirsten Dunst, and she was great in that scene. So it didn't bother me so much. I forgave it.
I forgive nothing. Because every time this man makes a movie, everyone forgives everything. All at once. And it needs to stop.
I mean, that's not true. No. The people on this call are the only ones who saw Men.
Do we know that? Then how did he get bankroll for another film?
That is apparently also mind-blowingly doing so well at the box office, which just, I mean, I just am like, the amount of dollars from the American people spent watching this like highly anxiety-inducing traumatic movie. I'm like, this is probably not what the nation needs right now. Maybe not. Maybe our anxiety doesn't need to be quelled by watching it all play out for answering the what if question. Like, maybe this is not the healthiest.
Going back to Nate's music point, I love Sammy dies and you see Joel screaming, but it's one of those muted scenes where you can't hear him, and instead there's just this really intense, brooding piece of the score that almost immediately cuts into a aerial montage with a country song playing to fly over the base and the tents at like the next outpost. And I feel like he was like, wait, we have to have the aerial montage with the upbeat song because war movies do that. We'll just shoehorn it in right here.
I mean, I already talked about the music. I said what I needed to say there. I don't think any of the song choices and how they were used really worked for me. I like the sniper scene. I thought that was a funny interaction. Nice little pause.
That was good. Maybe Mr. Garland should stick to short film.
Just like, who, what side are you on? What side is he on? It's just like, the fuck are you talking? It's someone shooting at us, so we're shooting at them. What do you mean? I don't know. I liked all the little kind of vignettes. I agree that like the main characters were, I think, pretty weak, but I don't know. Everyone they interacted with was pretty strong. And I think that the Jesse Plemons scene is like the
so good
climax of the movie for me. Like, that was so good.
Yeah.
That was the only time in the movie I felt anything. Sorry.
Really? None of the other scenes? You're just chilling? You're just,
I was sitting in the back of a small theater with people in front of me, all excited, having chatter amongst themselves, and I was more interested in wondering what they were talking about and if it had to do with the movie.
Yeah, I was stressed the entire time. And I think that has to do a lot with the sound design. And like, there were so many moments when I felt like I was in the middle of whatever shenanigans was going on. So I was just stressed and like, get me out of here. I want nothing to do with this. I am not a photojournalist. I'm not a war journalist. No, here's my press pass. I'm going away. Like, get me out of this. So yeah, I think on that level, the sound design, the cinematography was really effective for me. I just wish that some of the like story elements were a little bit stronger to make this an all around better movie, like we've already discussed.
Maybe it's just me, but if I was a soldier in a high pressure situation, literally trying to breach a barricade, I don't think that because someone had a backstage pass equivalent hanging from their neck, that I would say, you know what I need to do in addition to what I'm doing right now? Babysit civilians with cameras. But everyone just welcomed them in with open arms like they were coming in from the cold. No, come on in. No, get between our caboose. Yeah, hang back. Hide behind the tank. Like, get the fuck out of here. We're in a war zone. Fuck you and your picture.
Yeah, I had that same thought too.
I mean, that's a bad take. Like, this happens in real life. Like, like the optics of what you're doing, like the optics of battle matter, and like, you know, getting that to the public matters. Like, war journalists are on the front lines like this, just not in American civil wars.
And I think that's part of it. Like, because yes, I'm well aware that there's like war journalism that is trying to like shed a view into something that otherwise like won't be seen to the rest of the world. But this just felt like, yes, you need to come in while we execute the president. You being there is just as much of a priority as us doing it. Like, no, it didn't feel like it added up.
Yeah, disagree.
Well, in that final like sequence where they're going to the hunt for the president, there's just so many shots of these soldiers that are executing their missions having to like drag Jessie back to keep her safe. And so I feel like some of the way that this is shot, perhaps like I was frustrated that she was there because I'm like, this guy's got a job to do and he's got to like babysit this girl who has no training on this at all. So I'm also like, why? Like maybe we need she just showed up for the journey, for the road trip. And like this, it's a little bit like there's now more attention that this person who is executing a difficult task needs to pay attention to take care of this person. So I was frustrated with her. And maybe that's just the way that it was shot, where there's so many shots of that in that sequence where they're constantly having to be like, no, get back. No, like, get back here. You know what I'm saying? And maybe there's a better way to shoot that so that I, as the viewers, don't feel that, because I think that there's some really great moments that, like, I think Lee's character says at one point, like, we take the photos so that other people can be asking the right questions. And I thought there's these moments where this movie seems to celebrate photojournalists and war journalists and all that they do and the significance of the roles that they play in bringing the humanity to these situations that are horrific, but like helping the public not become desensitized. But then there's the other moments where I'm like, there's like a muddled point of view that I received, which maybe wasn't the movie's intention. I think the movie's intention was to revere these people.
But then they're so
I'm logistically frustrated that this girl is just there with her little camera.
Agreed. They're also super desensitized. And also, I guess with the press thing, I would wonder about the inclusion of, like, I don't think soldiers go to war saying, like, we need to protect a press convoy. Maybe they do. I don't know. Like you said, they're on the front lines. But when I'm thinking about a situation like this, if you lose, you could be persecuted for war crimes taken by the very people that you are, like, bringing along with you. Pictures taken by the very people.
For what? I think if they lose, they, like, you know, like the insurrection or whatever you want to call it would be what they would be executed for. Like, high treason, right?
Right, but couldn't, like, all right, so let's say they stormed and they lost and they, like, fled. How would we know they were part of said insurrection?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we might be a little bit too in the weeds on this one.
All right.
I think your point is basically the stakes are high for these soldiers execute their mission for their side. The stakes are high for not being ultimately fulfilling their mission because of potential like split attention, having to care for or pay attention to the other people and other human lives that they are also looking to protect, right? That's kind of what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of it. The other part doesn't matter. We can move on.
Is there a movie here that you would enjoy, Jen and Pat? Is there like a way to script doctor this?
I mean, going back to Jen's point, like if the characters had more depth and I could actually form a connection with them and be like rooting for them and get behind their like mission.
Is this angle correct? Like this journalism angle? I'm just curious if this was doomed from the start, like having a modern day Civil War kind of thing. Is there any way to tell that story well? And that's kind of a big question for a hot seat answer.
Yeah, I can't answer that.
I think that this film should have focused on the photojournalism aspect and the power of storytelling and art. There's just so much like meta commentary there that is so fascinating around the role of the way visuals drive action and responses based on the emotion, which is kind of his, I guess, meta point of like, if we show you this, if we were to really play out the divisions in our country, don't we all want to find a better path? And that's kind of also like what war journalists and photojournalism does, is it brings the humanity to these big issues and challenges that are we become desensitized to. And in a way, like this movie is photojournalism, you could argue, I guess, somehow, where it's wanting to take this objective view, thinking about if we were to play this out, how horrific it would be. And the call to action is, let's figure out how to drive better unity, collaboration, all that goodness so that we avoid this possible future and the horrors of it. And so I think this film should have focused on the photojournalists, some great characters, some moments where they have to reckon with maybe the disconnection that they've also had, the desensitization they've also had, and really sit with what the challenges of what they're doing and all that kind of stuff, in the same way that we as the viewers also need to reckon with our own desensitization to the media and the images in the media. Like, I think that would have been so great. So like the seeds are there. We got a different crop, but the seeds I think were there to be really fascinating.
And the significance, add to your list the significance of their work. I mean, basically what we walk away from is somewhere there's a bunch of undeveloped film and a hard drive with a bunch of pictures that like could tell a story. Did they? Do they? Will they? I don't know. The movie didn't focus on that.
Yeah, I think part of what like it kind of also bugged me about this framing is the impossibility of this in this dystopian world, of the nation being so divided, felt like loomed so large that I was waiting to see like how do they view their roles in the context of what feels so big and so divided, you know what I mean? And like, how does that, their work like begin to drive change or begin to fall into the right hands? And like, I think that the role that they're playing in the context and the backdrop felt just so disconnected that I also struggled with that a lot, because they are our protagonists and we're following them. And I want to rally behind them to be like, I believe in what you're doing in your role against the largeness of what you're depicting. But I think we didn't get any moments of even like glimmers of that. So it felt a little hopeless and impossible to me as the viewer to like follow and root for these people. So I think that also is like a dissonance that I was feeling. I'm like, I love this, and I feel like that is so significant, and the movie's captivated by it. But like, it also just feels so impossible because we're driving through like parts of the country that are like totally torn up. Like it just is so big that I'm like, I don't know. I believe in you, but this is really big. This is much bigger than you, which is not the feeling you're supposed to have in a movie where you're rooting for the protagonist, or at least their belief of their mission and the role that they get to play in this larger story to make some sort of progress in a better direction.
Yeah, it's like a pretty huge civil war going on.
Yeah, it's
all across America.
Kind of big, right?
I'm looking forward to never seeing that trailer again.
What about y'all? If you had to script doctor this, what would you evolve?
Well, just no, go ahead.
No, good. You're so quick to like give up. Anytime we talk at the same time, you're just like, forget it.
Go on.
I was just gonna say that. So I think for me, like the first hour plus ish of this movie is actually pretty strong. I think that the assault on Washington, while it had like all the dramatic imagery, was pretty like boring, and I think undermined like the previous hour of the movie, where it was like, it was kind of like a push forward, like camera on the shoulder kind of thing, and it's just like as a viewer, you're kind of like, are they going to get there? Are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? And it's just like, well, wait, if this is an anti-war movie, then fuck it all, right? Why? I don't care. I'm not supposed to care. So I think it kind of falls apart for me there. I think part of the problem with this movie is like the money around it. Like this being such a big budget movie, it kind of can't have too much to say about this really like big topic. Like if this movie was like half the budget or anything like that, just cut like all that Washington shit, have a lot more of those like vignettes of like what it's like in America during like this time of like military turmoil and great unrest, and then like end the movie at like the Jesse Plemons thing, and like kind of have an unsatisfactory ending where they don't get there, they don't get the shot. I think is something that I probably would have enjoyed more than this, and I think that there's more interesting stuff you could do with that.
Sarah, what about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that sounds really good. The Washington piece I really hated because that was like the most war movie like to me, and I just hate war movies. Like I'm not a war movie person, so going to see this movie was not something that I wanted to do this year because I thought it was going to be a war movie. So I like that it's from the perspective of these journalists, because then it made it bearable for me to watch. So I agree. I wish that there had been more of those vignettes and seeing what the effects of something like a civil war could have on this nation. And I think that could have been really powerful, because I think once they got to Washington, I just completely checked out, and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, let's just be done with this movie. So I think a different ending, especially because of how it ended. Like the ending is already pretty unsatisfying, like Lee dies, Jesse doesn't react, Joel gets a really lame quote. Like it's still not a good ending.
That'll do.
Yeah.
So like an intentionally unsatisfying ending on their journey probably would have been a better place to leave it, and maybe could have I don't know, maybe left the door open for some of that like call to action, like you were saying, Jen, of like pushing people toward making changes so that this doesn't happen, and like really bringing that point home of like, hey, a civil war would be bad. Like, let's take steps to make sure that doesn't happen here.
Yeah. Instead, they end with a shot of the Western forces smiling next to the president that they just took out. And like, that's the final point of the photojournalism theme too, which I think is also just kind of muddled, because that's, I don't know, I don't know if we were supposed to feel a sense of like, we did it, we did the mission, we got the shot, the Western forces got the president. Like, was that meant to play for a feeling of a victory or not? I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to feel, so I just left the theater wondering, and walked into the sunlight and tried to forget this experience.
+1. Sarah, do you not like horror movies just because of the intensity?
Yes, and I mean, I hate war so much, and like the anti-war movies, I'm like, okay, that's better, but the ones that are like valorizing war and all of this, I'm like, this seems really problematic to me, and I don't enjoy watching like war battles. I don't want to watch that.
That's fair.
So I usually don't.
Yeah. That's fair. The siege on Washington from like a execution standpoint in terms of story moments didn't make sense to me, which is another reason why I was like checked out. So this is what I imagine happened in the writer's room. Homeboy's sitting there with his like second in command. See what I did there? And he's like, how should we do this? Well, they got to get the president in the White House. Yeah, but now we'll have this big shootout with the Secret Service, but he'll be the last one alive in the White House. We'll have people who've committed suicide in other rooms. He'll literally be defenseless. That would never fucking happen. The president would be so long gone from Washington before they even built a cement barricade. And then the Western forces have helicopters. They wouldn't have gone in on foot. They would have bombed the White House. I was like, this is all semantics. We're just here for what's supposed to be a good time, of which this is not. There you go. I popped off.
I was going to say, goodbye to the inside voice. It was nice knowing you while you stayed.
Yeah, you kind of have to turn your brain off about a lot of that stuff. Cause,
that's why I go see the Fast and Furious, not why I watch like this.
Like, surely we could have come up with something better than he's hiding under the desk in the Oval Office, just so that we could have the Oval Office shot, because photojournalism, you know? But no, like, any other room, I would have been much happier with. I would have rather watched 10 hours of horse birth, I'm not going to lie. That thought crossed my mind, like, several times throughout the movie. I would watch that 10-minute sequence from men again and again. Instead of this.
No, you wouldn't.
When they were turning the corner,
you'd make it 2 times through that, and you'd be like, "Nah, put on Civil War."
when they were turning the corner to go into the Oval Office, I literally had the thought, sitting by myself, fingers crossed, please let the president be like a fucking centaur or something. Just give me something fucking weird. Like, I know you got it in you, Alex. Come on. Let's keep it going. We know what lane you like to operate in. But alas, yet just another disappointment in the ride that was this movie.
I could do with some magical realism in this movie. That would have made it fun.
Although
there was a little bit of that with like California and Texas, apparently.
Right.
Yeah, California and Texas joining forces. That's some good fantastical horror. That's great.
But I don't think that there was any dropping fruit or rolling fruit. I don't think that there was any fruit featured prominently in this movie. So at least there isn't that to really piss you off, Pat. It's the one thing this movie has going for it.
That's true. But, he's graduated from that. If I want to get my fruit fix, I now go to such low-level things such as a series with the title True Detective. That's where I get my fill of that. I'm like irrationally angry. I would pay the ticket fee again.
I could tell,
just to get my time back.
It sounds like the intent from what I read was to be an engaging viewing experience and to provoke conversation. And on those metrics, I think it succeeds just by the runtime of this conversation. And I was definitely engaged the whole time. Maybe it didn't work for Pat. It sounds like you fell asleep during the first half.
No, I watched it. It is wild to me that this man wrote 28 Days Later. And it is devastating to me that, one, they're making yet another sequel 28 years later, and two, that it is his movie. Oh, man.
You liked Ex Machina, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But did he direct that, or did he write that, or both?
Both.
Both? Maybe he needs to stay in a world where it's so sci-fi from the get that all the unbelievable shit you just, like, excuse. This is wild. You know what's wild about this? I was thinking during this movie, what would this movie look like if Christopher Nolan directed it?
Mm.
Like, how much bigger would it feel? And, like, how much would there actually be characters you cared about? What's wild to me in my brain is that Cillian Murphy, who's at the top of the top right now in Hollywood from his outing with Christopher Nolan, is now about to go work with Alex Garland. That seems abusive and disrespectful. That man deserves so much more.
Couldn't disagree more. Not that Cillian Murphy's bad, but Alex Garland's great.
Did he also do the Lighthouse movie? Is that why you're saying this?
No, that was Robert Eggers.
Oh. Yes, he's more about the actual orifices than he is the secretions thereof.
Yeah.
That's the...
I guess we'll have to get back together for Nosferatu next.
Wait, is the Lighthouse guy doing that one?
Yeah, that's Robert Eggers. The Lighthouse guy. Wait, do you know a director other than Christopher Nolan?
David Fincher, Robert Rodriguez, George Miller, Quentin Tarantino. You want me to keep going?
There we go. Exclusively action directors.
F. Gary Gray.
Is that a horror director? I don't know him.
He's the director of Friday, Nate.
Oh.
Ah, shit.
Oh.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah. Shame on you.
I guess I haven't seen it enough times.
Probably not. Next time we get together, we'll have to watch it. Sorry that I have not allocated mental space to remember the names of the horse birth guy and the lighthouse guy.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
All right. Any other thoughts about Civil War? I am surprised, Sarah, you and Nate, you both are a lot warmer to this movie than I would have.
We're often on the same side of the table. Mm-hmm. I think I'm gonna have to start hating True Detective now.
Don't do it, Nate. Don't come to my side of the table where I'm clearly wrong. But I do wonder, because I wonder, like, what our expectations were going into it, because I know that you had watched the trailer and had formed what you thought this movie was going to be, and I just, because it's called Civil War, so I was expecting it to be more focused on, like, the fighting and the violence and the war of it all, so I was prepared for that movie, and so I was almost relieved that we didn't get that. And so I think that probably plays into my experience, because I was expecting this to be much worse than it is. So I think that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, I pretty much hated that trailer from the moment I saw it. Like, if it didn't have like Alex Garland, Kirsten Dunst, and Jesse Plemons, and also like Offerman, I probably wouldn't even have seen this movie, like, ever.
Mm-hmm. Wait, what's the deal with the trailer?
Like, on the merits of, it just looked like, to me, it looked like a Roland Emmerich does Civil War movie. It just was like very action oriented. It seemed disrespectful of like the weight of that topic. And yeah, it's like cut very differently from what this movie is. I also saw like a lot of movies last year, and the marketing budget for this fucking movie must have been like double what the making of it was, or at least it was at Alamo Drafthouse, because I've seen this trailer probably like 40 times. It just kept coming up, and I was like, Oh god! Like they started showing this trailer before I think I saw the Dune 2 trailer, and it's just
That's
been going
crazy.
since then. Yeah.
Well, the ROI is great on it. It's like A24's like biggest opening movie weekend ever. Just wild. Absolutely wild.
I think it has to make kind of a lot of money for it to
And
like
we just
make its money back.
contributed
So.
to it.
We did.
What'd you say?
And we just contributed to it. All right, next time, Nate, can you just like film it on your Samsung phone, and I'll just like watch it on my iPad.
Yeah, you'll get the full experience of this movie.
Well, I'll wear earbuds, you know.
You feel that bass in your eardrum.
That's some fascinating marketing, though. Like, really set the expectations real low from the trailer, and then we've got some warm responses to the movie because it was a relief.
Yeah, it's weird. I usually hate that. Like when I am served a different movie than I am like sold, I am very upset. But in this case, it lowered my expectations so hard that I was like, yeah, all right, I'm on board.
Yeah, I think we should just all, save our $15 million that we spend for a ticket at the box office and use that to spend $3.49 to go watch BlacKkKlansman by Spike Lee, which is also about division and ideology in America. And watch that. Rent that. Watch that. It is so good and has such like fascinating ideas and tackles the subject in a really respectful way, but also in a really engaging way. It's less goddamn traumatic, and I think I expected Alex Garland to have a lot of like just ideas, perspective. I mean, all of his other works, they just are so idea driven, and I guess his idea with this movie was to have it not have ideas, but I was expecting him to have a point of view and a stance and a like something, especially if we're going to tackle a topic like this, like, man, something. And he's taken a very different approach, which is like just not what I wanted, not what I expected.
I love that this conversation ends with Jen just straight up doing a full plug for a completely unrelated movie. Love it. I love everything about that.
I have heard the take that like as Alex Garland gets better as like a director and like more competent as a filmmaker, his writing gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some credence to that.
His IMDb picture right now is the poster behind him and his hands positioned like this with a serious face, like palms out, aimed away from his body. You know he is doing nothing but saying the most contrived shit in that video clip.
Well, he's taken a step back from directing for a while, for the foreseeable future.
Thank God I just saw that Dan Boyle's going to be doing the 28 Years Later movie. It might actually have a chance. I'm so happy for Killian. I can sleep tonight.
So maybe, maybe we come back in like 4 or 5 years when he's like flexed his writing muscles. And we'll get like a great high budget A24 book.
Mm-hmm.
In 4 or 5 years, he's going to be like, remember when I made that incredible Civil War movie the same year as an election year?
Anyways, great movie. In theaters now. Everyone go see it.
Or go watch BlacKkKlansman.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. $3.49.
That works too. Yeah.
Also a good take.
But if you really must go to theaters, you'd be better suited to go see Godzilla X Kong.
I didn't see that, but I almost certainly disagree.
Good for you. You have no ground with which to have an opinion.
Hey, we did converse, so he didn't say what we had to converse about, so it's a win.
This is true.
That's what I like about it. It's a good movie to have a conversation about. What is there to say about Godzilla versus Kong?
Yo, that mocap game was on point.
Ape punch good.
Yeah, well, if you want to be such a reductionist, Nate, then so be it.
You said this movie was White House down in a blender with fucking bleach. What is that?
No, it was White House down with pee mixed with the Purge 4th of July with bleach.
This is good. All right. Well, this is our review and provoking conversation about Civil War. You can find it available out in theaters. Apparently, that's the best viewing experience instead of a Samsung recorded version on a laptop.
Just don't go.
Well, thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us, and thank you, Pat and Nate, for engaging in this conversation with us. We will review something we all believe is great and fabulous the next time. We must. All right, well, our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and a review letting us know your thoughts about Civil War. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at MoviesAndUsPod, or email us at moviesandUsPod@gmail.com. We will be back next week to discuss the film Inside Out. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again real soon.